Hi, I'm Patti Glaza, and I'm with Arsenal Venture Partners. And Arsenal is a early stage venture fund, and we fund companies that usually the late seed A/B round in the sectors of IT and communications, power and energy, and industrial and environmental. Arsenal's been around for a little over a decade, and our sweet spot is really looking at opportunities where there's a large commercial opportunity, but where there's also a military application where we can leverage the defense industry and our partnership with the U.S. military. We run the U.S. military's venture fund called On Point Technologies. So if we can leverage the industry component to it or our military connections to help companies get non-dilutive development dollars, to get early customer demonstration, and to get early sales with the military before a product is actually scaled, that's where we typically tend to try to find our investments. From a venture capital perspective, when you look at it historically, the investment levels have been pretty steady if you look at it from a 10-year perspective. There's fluctuation, so obviously the venture industry took a big dive in 2008, 2009 with the rest of the financial world. But what we see now is investments back up to a reasonable trend. The difference is where we're able to invest. So before, we used to be able to take much earlier stage companies, technology that was still much more bench prototype level, and be able to invest in those companies. Because our funds are, the length of our fund is only 10 years. So we have to make sure we identify companies or opportunities we'll see a reasonable potential exit within 3 to 5 years. Because you can almost expect that to double in actually the time it takes for a company. So we've moved when we can invest into a company later down than what we have in the past. So we see a greater pool of opportunities. We can pick the better opportunities. But I also think that makes it harder for the startup company because they're competing with a greater number of companies for a pool of capital. Government funding is absolutely critical to technologies that have long development roadmaps. And people truly underestimate how much government funding has impacted our society. And without that, we would not see the innovation that we see here in the US. And if it doesn't continue, then we'll see innovation fall off. But another interesting area where there's gap funding is at that point where you've got the idea and you've got the early stage company, but how do you get that $500 to $1.5 million that you need to truly get customers starting to sample or test your product, or to get those partnerships, the development partnerships going. And the states and local communities are really stepping up here. So while traditional investors have had to move farther down the chain, you're seeing states and communities and universities. Universities are stepping up and backing professors out of their own universities. But it's that kind of gap early commercialization stage that has also been in trouble. But there are, the state government funding of early stage technology, they're taking a greater role in that. In the states where they're supporting it, we're starting to certainly see a difference. One area where there's still a lot of interest and a lot of room to grow is in efficiency. So where, let's look at high power lasers, where you can reduce the energy input into those laser systems. That's a huge industrial, and same on the military. Those are huge gains that people are still looking for. So anywhere where you can show from an energy power perspective savings, and that can be, as I said, from this huge lasers to a chip at a data center, or the lights used, the LED lighting. And I think that's why LED lighting is still something that you still see quite a bit here, is because that market is still getting ready to explode. There's a lot of new technologies, there's a lot of applications, but there's still the cost performance issues that need to be addressed. A lot of what Photonics West for me is, I think a huge part of it is networking. So, I've built a lot of great industry relationships over the past decade, and coming and talking to folks and hearing what they're doing, what new innovations are going on, how their businesses are doing. That's a really important part, because you really want to understand, how the sector is growing and what areas are booming. And it's good to just kind of keep those relationships going. I think the other things that I look for, I like to see, again, the industry applications. So where are people taking photonics? What sectors are there high growth? Or where do we see the high growth on the horizon in terms of what people are looking for? I like to see what's the energy. So, is it a high growth energy and people are excited and you see business deals being done at every corner? Or is it, a down year? And I think certainly this year appears to be, a lot of things are going on, and a lot of deals appear to be going on. I also look at, I might meet one or two new companies here that I would look at from an investment perspective. I certainly hope that people reach out to me if they see me speaking or see me at the business plan competition. But there are always a couple companies that I've either evaluated or in the process of evaluating. So what allows me to do, if they're exhibiting on the floor, I'll go talk to them, see what their traffic's like. I'll talk to potentially some of their suppliers who are here. And it gives me a better sense for, what's their place in the industry. There's only so much you can glean as a venture capitalist when you're sitting in a conference room and getting a PowerPoint presentation. But when you're at a show like this, you can really talk to the people who would be the buyers of the technology and get a much better sense for the market opportunity.